Okay, we're ready to get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to True Tech Tools training. We have Mike Rogers from Amstout Consulting, who'll be talking about the evolution from HVAC into home performance. Mike's got a ton of good experience, but I'll let Mike introduce himself. Go right ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks everybody for taking the time out of your busy days to attend this. I'm going to spend about the next hour or so talking about what I think is an absolutely enormous opportunity for the HVAC industry, and that's really to move, when we're talking about heating and cooling homes, to move beyond just talking about a box that we stick down in a basement crawl space or up in an attic, and really talking about delivering heating and cooling in the best way possible, maximizing the comfort for the homeowners, improving indoor air quality, etc. A lot of the stuff that the HVAC industry is already talking about. A little bit about my background. I grew up in a residential contracting family, and my dad laughs at me because I swore I would never have anything to do with residential contracting, and just a couple of months ago I left the contracting business where I'd been for the last 7 years or so. I'll touch on that in a second. And I guess the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree despite my engineering and business background. Going back into the late 1990s and the early 2000s, created a program for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency called Home Performance with Energy Star, helped EPA and DOE roll that around the country. And then at the end of 2005, took a position with Green Homes America, whose business was, and still is, in fact, centered exclusively on converting an HVAC contractor to a home performance contractor, or adding home performance into that HVAC business. So the stuff I'm going to talk to you today really draws on not just my experience with Green Homes, but dating back 6 or 7 years prior to that, and the opportunity to talk with literally hundreds of contractors around the country, many of whom invited me into their businesses to see what was going on, to look for ways to help, and to help tease out what the opportunity and the approach looked like. So I am going to talk a little bit about the opportunity for home performance here, and very specifically what that opportunity looks like with respect to an HVAC contractor. Touching on things like revenue, margins, seasonality, marketing, sales, etc. Now, when we're talking about the market opportunity, and specifically around home performance, a lot of people get excited about home performance with Energy Star. It's actually a program that I designed back in 2001 for EPA, and I think it's a good indicator. And if you look, in 2001 we had New York and Wisconsin piloting this concept, and right now there's more states than not that have some form of home performance program, whether statewide or at the local level. I think this is a good indication, and it's certainly something to pay attention to. But in my mind, when I look at a market opportunity, I want to look at the market. I don't want to look at the program. I love a well-designed and well-implemented program, but you can't build your business around that. Build your business around an opportunity, and then take advantage of those well-designed programs if they happen to exist in your area. And one of my heroes out there in this space is a guy named Jerry Unruh, ABC Cooling. He runs businesses in Fresno and Hayward, California. Very successful HVAC contractor who a couple of years ago moved into home performance. And I've heard Jerry say numerous times over the last year or so, as he's gotten acquainted with home performance and seen what it does, how it affects his business, increasing revenue, increasing profitability, he'll come out and say, he loves the program, he's glad to participate, but if it went away tomorrow, he would do nothing different. He and his company have thoroughly embraced home performance. they think that it works out there on its own. And that's really the point that you have to get to if you're going to make the investment required to move your business in this way. Does this make sense for my business if the program doesn't exist? Because few programs stick around long enough that we can really hang our hat off it over to recover the sort of investments that we have to make and really have it make sense. On the other hand, if it makes sense from a business perspective, boy, bring me that low-interest financing, bring me the homeowner rebates or the contractor incentives, bring that stuff all day long, because it just minimizes my risk and speeds the return on my investment and the pathway to profitability. The market here is huge. Even looking at just single-family homes, multifamily, there's some big opportunities. They're a little harder to get to. Even looking at single-family homes, though, there's 90 million of them out there, and almost every single one, the closest whole number to the homes that don't need a lot of home performance type services would be 0%. Almost every home needs a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here. There's going to be a lot of increasing demand on our infrastructure. If you look at the regional electric compacts around the country, they essentially think of that as the grid or the regional grid. Most of them are projected to have some sort of shortfall by 2015. And there's two basic ways to address that shortfall. Generate more, and that's increasingly harder to do as people don't want generation in their backyard, whether it's nuclear or coal or even natural gas. And the other way to get there is with efficiency. I happen to live in a city, Burlington, Vermont, that's seen very little increase in demand for electricity, even as people add 48-inch TVs and 18 computers in their house and business growth and all that other sort of stuff. Very little increase in electric demand because they've been very, very aggressively pursuing efficiency at the same time. And increasingly, at the state PUC level and at the regional level, people are understanding that efficiency makes a lot of sense and it needs to be part of the equation. We have things like frost on the beach in San Diego and hurricanes hitting the coast of New Jersey and New York that I think are going to start focusing a lot of attention on climate change. I happen to believe in that, but you don't have to, because energy efficiency makes sense from an energy perspective, a security perspective, and as I'll talk about here, it makes sense from a business perspective, and that's true whether you believe in climate change or not. So let's just leave that conversation for sometime when we're sitting around the bar with a beer. Leaders are not waiting for this. I mentioned I came from Green Homes America. They're expanding around the country. In fact, this map is now out of date. They've added several locations since I created this slide. Carrier in 2012 introduced its 360 program. There's other HVAC manufacturers following suit. They're very interested in home performance, and I'll tell you the reason why. Obviously, an organization like Carrier wants to sell more HVAC equipment, but what they see is dealers who are embracing home performance thriving. Their businesses are growing, and as a result, they're selling more equipment. So if they help their dealers move to home performance, they're going to win. The dealers that don't move to home performance aren't going to win. Groups like ACI, Comfort Institute have been around doing training in this arena for a couple of decades. And sort of a newcomer, certainly folks in the HVAC world are familiar with ACA, but they hosted this past fall a building performance forum. They're recognizing the opportunity. It's not just the big organizations either. We could rattle off leading contractors from Isaac Heating and Cooling in Rochester, New York, to ASI Hastings in San Diego, California, and lots of leading HVAC companies in between are showing that you can have a very profitable business by folding home performance into the mix. And why are they looking at this? It's a game changer. It completely changes the way you approach the house. It also completely changes the conversation you have with the homeowner in a way that sets you apart from all the competition who are not embracing home performance. I'll get into some specifics on the revenue margins and profitability. They're absolutely there. You can differentiate your business in part by the way you involve the homeowner, also in part by the results that you can absolutely wow them with. You know, I don't care what piece of equipment you put in, the fanciest top-of-the-line box with great zone controls. You know, if the envelope of the house sucks, pardon my French, and the wind blows and all that conditioned air moves out of the house, and the cold air like we're experiencing right now, or hot, humid air that we experience in the summer, you know, moves in and out of the house sort of at the mercy of whatever driving force you want, whether we're talking wind, mechanical, induced pressures, or stack effect. You just can't control things fast enough sometimes. The wind can suck that air out of the house faster than your zone controls can respond and deliver comfort. Embracing home performance, I'll touch on ways that your business can improve by addressing seasonality, reducing callbacks, and all of this stuff together, by the way, also leads to higher customer satisfaction. Folks in the contracting world know that the best source of business is existing customers, either your existing customer base with new services that they take on or referrals from them. If you can increase satisfaction within your existing base, you're going to do very well. And what the companies embracing this right now are seeing is, because so few others are doing it, they have an opportunity to greatly increase market share. So you've seen people over the last few years, when much of the residential contracting industry has kind of struggled a bit. You've seen HVAC contractors over the last few years embracing this and experiencing very significant growth. And the way you do this is moving beyond that piece of equipment that you're putting in the basement or the attic, and use the strengths that an HVAC contractor brings to bear. And I'll come back to these in a minute. But customer base, there's a reason it's at the top. HVAC contractors, pardon me, have something that few others in the residential contracting world have, and that is huge active customer bases. That makes it much easier to capture customers' attention. Marketing costs are much lower, and sales are much better as a result. If you're running an HVAC service business, not just an installation business, you understand about customer service and scheduling and all that sort of stuff. That also gives you a leg up. And clearly you have a head start from somebody coming into this arena from a completely greenhorn perspective, in that you're already in homes, you're writing contracts with customers, you have the technical skills to be able to install HVAC equipment. You can learn the other technical skills. Hap Haven has a great session coming up in 2 days here that TruTech's also sponsoring. I'd encourage you to participate here. I'm not going to get into the technical elements of home performance, talk too much about the diagnostics or the actual improvements made. I'll touch on them a little bit. But if I capture your interest at all, make sure you sign on and listen to Hap on Thursday. Going back to Jerry Unruh, I mentioned him. I happened to sit in on a webinar he gave. Now, I'm going to give you some more conservative numbers here, because Jerry runs an outstanding business. His HVAC business was just exemplary before he moved into home performance a little over a couple years ago. And you know, the results he's seeing as a result of the foundation that he was building on and his own business skills are pretty remarkable. I wanted to share them. I like to talk a little bit more conservatively. Not everybody's starting from the same point that Jerry was. But the marketing costs for this are less than half of what he's seen on the HVAC installation side. Close rate, at least as good, often better. The average job size, take a look at that. Imagine when you went out and you were able to double your average sale. Think about what that could do to drive business, especially in light of that first point. Marketing costs are lower, but the average job size is bigger. And then margins are 13% higher. This stuff is real, and you can start to see that it has or can have a pretty significant impact on an HVAC business. Now, as I just mentioned, Jerry had an excellent foundation. Your mileage may vary. It depends on who you are, where your business is at right now. But home performance for an HVAC contractor does typically mean bigger jobs and higher margins. So let's kind of break this down a little bit. Now, and I'm using national averages. You can kind of translate that, and you'll see I'm being a little bit more, actually quite a bit more conservative than folks like Jerry have experienced and folks like many other, or I'm sorry, things that many other HVAC contractors have experienced.
Hey, Mike.
Nationally, a good average.
This is Bill. We have a question that came in.
Sure.
What is the best and quickest way to have customers realize that weatherization, quote unquote, should come before box changing?
I'm going to defer that. If I don't answer that in about 10 or 15 slides, feel free to raise it again.
Very good.
But that's going to come up.
Okay.
If we look nationally and translate this, because there's huge variability, translate this to what your own business experience is. But nationally, a good average would be about $6,500 for an HVAC installation. You can see growth in that from $2,000, $3,000, and some contractors have actually seen that average ticket size, as I say, double. All right, take a look at gross margins. Now, as soon as I say gross margins, we open up the can of worms that we could have a couple hundred people on the call right now, and you all use a couple hundred different accounting systems and formats, and your chart of accounts looks different. So don't focus so much on what the actual number is, but look at the improvement. Because when we talk about gross margins, you may or may not include trucks and fuel and production management and all that stuff. Take a look at the difference between HVAC and HVAC plus home performance. And what I've seen as a good working number or benchmark is whatever margins you're experiencing on the HVAC side, you should expect about 8 to 10 points higher when you add home performance in. So if your margins are 40%, you should expect that to increase to about 50%. If your margins are 50%, more power to you. You should expect your margins to increase to 60%. That slide I shared from Jerry showed he's actually experiencing 13%. Again, I like to sell it a little bit more conservatively, and if you can beat that, that's awesome. Close rates, again, as good or better than you're experiencing right now. Well, if you add higher revenue, a few $1,000s or maybe even doubling your average ticket, if you're increasing your gross margins and you're selling on a percentage basis at least as much, maybe more than you were selling before, you can start to see how the numbers make a lot of sense. But it's not just about kind of increasing the revenue, the gross margins. There's some things driving some of the other costs in the overhead. First of all, obviously if the phone doesn't ring and you don't make sales, none of the average ticket size or average margins or average profitability really matters. And
hey, Mike.
to market and sell well, you have to be able to differentiate. Well, You know, are you fully insured? Well, so is your competition. Bonded? Yep, so is the competition. Licensed? You have tax, pre-estimates, all this stuff, you know, that HVAC contractors have used to differentiate themselves from Bubba or Chuck in a truck or, you know, whoever your lowball competition is. Well, increasingly, more and more of the competition out there is adding all this sort of stuff in. So if everybody else is doing it, it's no longer differentiation. If you really want to differentiate, you have to use something that differentiation, by definition, means you're standing apart. Well, home performance lets you use diagnostics to find root problems, which leads directly to solutions that actually deliver results. Somebody's complaining about their daughter's bedroom that's too cold all winter long, and your only tool in your tool belt is a larger furnace, or even a larger furnace with better distribution. You may not be able to address the root cause of that daughter's cold bedroom if it's above, it's a room above a garage and the floor isn't insulated and the attic insulation's insufficient and there's bypasses everywhere. There could be a variety of other deficiencies coming into play. And even again, with the best HVAC equipment, the outstanding zoning controls, and a top-notch distribution system, you're not going to be able to deliver comfort to that daughter's bedroom, as well as somebody who can take control of the bedroom and insulate the space between the garage and the bedroom and make sure the attic is as well. So what the conditioned air we're delivering to that room actually has a chance of staying there for a couple of minutes and delivering comfort.
Mike, we have a couple questions that came in.
Okay.
One of them about the percentages, I guess it was the profit percentages. Are there regions in the country that appear to be stronger than others, or are those national percentages?
Those are national, or they're derived from taking a look at lots of companies around the country. It's a good question, and I don't think it's the region of the country that matters as much as the strength of the business and the approach. I gave examples of two companies. Isaacs in Rochester, New York, looks a whole lot different than, say, an ASI Hastings in San Diego, California. Sometimes people talk about San Diego, for example, and say, why would you need to do home performance there? It's perfect every day. And it's true they may not have the same climate drivers as a place that has extreme cold or extreme hot, humid weather, or both, like we can see in parts of the upper Midwest. It can get hot and humid all summer and really cold all winter. So you might not have the climate drivers there, but you have the other drivers that actually people care about. Comfort issues, dust issues, indoor air quality issues, could be building durability. There's a variety of other issues, and I think focusing on climate and what region of the country you're in is a bit of a red herring. And once you're able to get out there and start making people's homes better, whether it's making them more comfortable because it's 0 degrees outside, or whether it's addressing the dust problem, you get to take customer satisfaction to a level that you could not do by swapping boxes alone. And the sorts of things you see every day from customers are like the quote here, "Finally, our family room is comfortable. It's like I have a completely different home." And they may have lived in their home for 20 years and had people throw various Band-Aids at it, and they had their air conditioner replaced twice, and it's still, they had a bigger duct run put in, but it's still not comfortable the way that they're experiencing once you go in and take a look at the entire house and treat it in a way that makes sense for that particular house. Talking about sort of profitability here, let's talk a little about seasonality. Now, again, this is one of those curves where your mileage may vary. this is not a national average. You don't care about national averages when you're running your business in whatever location you are in. So your curve may look a little bit different, but you have, in most places of the country, some sort of really busy season. Usually it's in the summer, often July and August, when you cannot find enough technicians to get out. You can't even find enough people to answer the phone sometimes. It's ringing so much in some parts of the country, let alone find the technicians to get out and take advantage of all the opportunity you could have during a couple of months. You also have some shoulder seasons. Sometimes they're real long, quiet shoulder seasons, depending where things are okay. People aren't too concerned. It's generally comfortable outside. You don't have a lot of sort of emergency breakdowns and panic attacks and those sorts of things. Well, what do you do during the slow season to support all of the overhead, all of the staff that you need to do to be able to deliver installations during the busy season? Now, smart HVAC contractors have service agreements, so they can, at their discretion, shift work into the shoulder seasons to stay busy, keeps the technicians busy, and as you in the HVAC world know, we also can get a very predictable revenue stream out of those service visits, so that helps smooth that curve off. You're still going to have the peaks, but at least you keep people busy, you cover your overhead, you keep the technicians on staff. The seasonality, by the way, is not limited to the HVAC sector. It hits insulation, it hits windows, it hits just about anything we can talk about. Insulation, for example, on the service side, not on the new construction side, people tend to think about it more in the winter, so it tends to be a little busier in the winter, a little less so in the summer. Windows are kind of the opposite of that. I think people think in the winter, if they're going to replace the windows in their home, you would drive up to the house, pull out all the windows, drive away, come back in a few weeks, put windows in. Obviously, that's not the reality, but that's the market reality. And as a result, windows are real slow in the winter. They're much busier in the summer months. All of this seasonality, the ups and downs, make it hard to manage overhead, to manage staff. Then one of the nice things about home performance is you get to level that stuff off. Your seasonality curve flattens, so all of your investment can be more productive. Your trucks are running all of the time rather than sitting on the parking lot half of the time. You have to pay that lease payment every month, whether you're using your truck or whether you're not using your truck. If you can keep people busy, hopefully you've found the right people, you've trained the right people. You don't want to lay them off for 3 months or 4 months every year. When you lay them off, there's a good chance, in fact, the chances are better that you lose them. You lose them to another industry, you lose them to a competitor, and you have to start that whole expensive recruitment, hiring, training process all over again. Or maybe you just hire and you don't train, and quality and satisfaction suffer as a result. Bill, did I see you flagging another question?
Yeah, someone was asking here, what are some of the challenges that have impeded the development of home performance with Energy Star in states where it's not adopted?
Wow, that's a great question. And I that involves, we need to have an entirely another webinar on this one, Bill.
Okay.
I'll distill it down to a thumbnail. I think where the program has had a challenge rolling out, it's often a result of the fact that the programs didn't figure out how the business works for a contractor well enough as they designed the program. I put together a nice presentation on exactly this point intended for a program audience. I'd be happy to forward that on. But when you set up a if you don't think about what that transaction looks like between the contractor and the homeowner, and do whatever you can to knock down barriers to facilitate that transaction, your program's going to struggle. As a result, contractors who've hitched their wagon to the program train have sometimes had difficulty too. As I said at the beginning, I love a well-designed and well-implemented program. I don't love a poorly designed or poorly implemented program. They can drive you nuts. They can drive you out of business, in fact. You need to look at, as a contractor, you need to come at this from a perspective of what do I need to make this work in the market. Now you can figure out whether it makes sense for you to participate in that program or not. And once you've figured it out in the market and you're showing success, now you can even be more proactive about it. You go to the program and show them what works and hopefully steer them in the right direction. Or you join an organization like Efficiency First, so you don't have to carry that message as an individual, but you can do it as part of an association with a collective voice and have a lot more impact. But I do think one of the biggest reasons that programs have stumbled is they haven't paid well enough attention to the business of residential contracting, HVAC contracting, home performance contracting. I don't care what you call it, because it has to work in the market if we want the program to work. The programs typically, there have been a few exceptions, which is outrageous incentives. The programs typically don't have enough resources to totally change that market dynamic. So if they want to be successful, they have to piggyback on it. Just very quickly to provide a little bit more context, and I am going to move very quickly here because Hap Haven has a great conversation coming up on Thursday that, again, I encourage all of you to join in. That's going to go into a lot more detail. But to provide some of the context for the business conversation, homeowners have problems. Hot rooms, cold rooms, my daughter's bedroom's too cold, you name it. It depends on where you are in the country. Homeowners have problems. And you'll notice on here that down on the bottom, high energy bills is one of the problems, but it's down on the bottom for a reason. It's usually not. There's always exceptions for individuals, and there's exceptions in certain situations, especially when we see utility bills spiking. If you're in the Northeast and the price of fuel oil goes above $4 or $5 a gallon, people get real nervous. But most of the time, it's not about high energy bills. It's about something else. If you understand the problems, comfort, indoor air quality, dust, noise, etc., and you can offer solutions that are actually going to address those problems, you have a huge opportunity. So what causes those problems? Well, houses don't work. Air leakage robs the house of all that conditioned air that you as an HVAC contractor may have actually, let's assume you did a perfect job delivering it to the space. Now, infiltration, exfiltration robs the house of all that conditioned air. Well, sometimes we don't do a good enough job delivering the air to begin with. The ductwork, they have leaks. 30%, from what I've seen from program results around the country, 30% duct leakage to the outside is a very common average, and it's a sort of a good rule of thumb to think that the average home in your area might be leaking 30% of that conditioned air to the outside. So in that case, what difference does it make if we put in a 95 AFUE furnace or a 16 or 18 SEER air conditioner if we're throwing 30% of it away? You look at interactive effects from lighting and appliances, and I'm thinking of a home in particular in Fresno, a single-story house. Fresno, this is predominantly a cooling climate, single-story house, 75 recessed can lights in that attic plane, all of them leakage pathways between the conditioned space and the house. Not only that, leaky supply ducts in the attic. Every time the air handler kicked on to deliver air-conditioned air to the space, the pressurized attic delivered hot, not just hot air, but hot air filled with particulate, fiberglass particles, mouse poop, whatever, to the space. Not only that, those 75 can lights were incandescent, most on the order of about a 75-watt bulb, so every time they turned one of them on, they were space heating their house with a little in-ceiling space heater. The air conditioner would come on to remove some of the heat from the inefficient bulb. As the air handler came on, they're actually pulling air from the attic down into the house, and it's just this huge, vicious circle. Terrible impact from a dust perspective, from a comfort perspective, and also from an energy perspective. You can try to fix, as I've said already, every problem in this house with an HVAC solution, but you just can't, you cannot do it. And I'm sure any HVAC contractor on this call has experienced a situation where they have done a top-notch installation, great equipment, great insulation. They may even have great distribution, but still not fix the problem. And as a result, they didn't make the customer happy. And if the customer's not happy, I called you, I just spent a lot of money, I'm not happy, it's because you're the problem. You didn't do a good job for me. Well, I'll try to get future business from that customer, try to get referrals from that customer. And it happens all the time because, unfortunately, heating and cooling the house is not limited to the equipment that we put in. A lot more comes into play here. Tight, well-insulated enclosures, tight ducts, efficient lighting, high-performing windows. Oh, yeah, if we're talking about HVAC, yes, efficient, well-installed, and well-maintained HVAC equipment also plays a role here. Just to illustrate, going back to that Fresno example, recessed can lights. By the way, I love this particular photo from Green Home showing air leaking from around this recessed can light, and the homeowner doing a great service to the neighborhood by filtering all that dirty air that was leaving the house before they sent it out to the neighborhood. You know, there's very simple solutions to this that are pretty easy to train to. And again, come back Thursday and we'll get into some of the technical approaches here. But the main point is, once you get in the home, the opportunities abound. What are the I think I misspelled opportunities there. The opportunities are to figure out what's going on in the house, to talk to the homeowner about it, to listen to the homeowner, ask lots of questions, figure out what the homeowner cares about, and then put together a solution that's actually going to deliver the results that they care about. And solutions and results that you can guarantee and stand behind, because your comfort level that they're actually addressing the root problem goes way up. Your technical ability to address the root problem goes way up. The chance that if you've done a good job, the chance that you're going to get a callback from an unhappy customer goes way down, and you don't have to pay the expense of rolling a service technician out to an installation that you've recently completed to troubleshoot why the homeowner isn't seeing the results. I know there's a bunch of questions lining up, so let me just circle back to the business and the advantages for an HVAC contractor. First and foremost, I think, is the large active customer base, especially a maintenance agreement base, and the systems in place to be able to track a large set of customers. You know, you need CRM. You need the ability to figure out where you stand with respect to, could be literally thousands of customers that you've worked with over the last year or last couple of years. The customer base combined with service techs are a perfect lead source. The question earlier was, how do we educate them about moving beyond the box? I just showed a slide involving the customer in the diagnosis is critically important. When you're setting up that blower door and pulling out the infrared camera and doing your combustion safety testing, having that customer there, engaging in a dialogue, asking them questions, figuring out what's going on, and then as you do the diagnostics, point out how the findings may be contributing to some of the problems that they've raised with you, really helps this almost sell itself. Say almost. Frequently it does sell itself that way. It sells itself better if you have good sales skills. Service techs in home performance is difficult to market. And it can be marketed effectively. You can generate leads in home performance, but you cannot generate leads at the quality nor as inexpensively as if you educate your service techs. Now, think of what a service tech is. A service tech is somebody that the homeowner already has a relationship with. They've invited you into the house. In fact, they're paying you to be there to maintain their equipment. There is some sort of a trust relationship there. If you can train your service technicians to spot opportunities, you don't have to train them, by the way, in being BPI certified and becoming salespeople. You can train them to help lead the customer there, though. Service techs are a huge resource for an HVAC contractor that most of the rest of the residential contracting world does not have. Add to that experience with what is quite often some of the more technically challenging components of the home, the mechanical equipment. Add to that sales experts. Add to that some of the key licensing and permitting and rebate processing experience, whether we're talking about programs or whether we're talking about manufacturer rebates or financing programs. Quite often the HVAC industry has experience here that many other contractors don't. I happen to believe, and my belief is based on experience and what I've seen actually out there in the marketplace, that an HVAC contractor is better positioned to deliver home performance than just about anybody else. That's not to say there aren't other effective models. I have great friends who are they're auditors. They have a consultant-based model, third party. They don't actually deliver the work. You can be successful with that. There's some really significant challenges to success there, but it can absolutely work. I've seen companies come at this from an insulation perspective. It can also work. I've seen companies grow a home performance business from the ground up, and that can also work too. That said, HVAC contractors, the advantage here is really overwhelming if you're willing to take advantage of it and if you're well positioned. The well positioned part is really important. You have to have your business fundamentals right first before you add all of the complexity. And make no mistake, adding home performance does make things more complex from a transaction perspective and from an overall operational perspective. Which is it's a best practice for HVAC contractors anyway, having a solid service and maintenance agreement base in place is huge. It goes back to that customer base and that service tech issue that I just mentioned. Having a system in place, a solid CRM, customer relationship management system, along with a workflow management system in place, so you can track not just customers but projects throughout their life cycle, is really, really important. If you don't have that and you think things are difficult running an HVAC business, wait till you add layers of complexity, especially if you're interfacing with a program and they're adding additional steps in that you might not have to do. Program pre-approvals on projects and all that sort of stuff, and some back-end approvals, and don't forget about payment. If you don't have the systems to be able to track that, you're going to struggle. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but boy, focus on some of this stuff first. As an HVAC contractor, boy, if you want to succeed, you should have regular in-house training. And by regular, I don't mean once a quarter or once a year. I mean weekly. You know, are you training your service technicians, your install technicians, your office staff, your salespeople on a regular basis? The answer is yes. It's going to be real easy to incorporate the additional elements for home performance. If the answer is no, it's going to be much more difficult, because you're certainly not going to get everything you need from going to a one-hour webinar or a two-day conference, everything you need to know about moving to home performance. It's going to require ongoing, in fact, never-ending training. If you want to succeed in business, I don't care whether you're talking about HVAC or home performance, that's true. And you need to know the numbers. You need to have a plan. You need to look at the investment that it's going to take. Let's say I might be spending $10,000 on diagnostic equipment and to set up one of my advisors. What's the additional training they're going to need? What's that going to cost if I'm going to be doing this in-house? What does the installation truck and all the equipment and tools and supplies look like? If I don't know my numbers and can't plop it into my pro forma and take a look at the impact on cash flow, I might be surprised when suddenly I can't make payroll on Friday. You have to know your numbers. Adding home performance to a good business with a solid foundation is a wonderful thing to do. Adding it to a business that you think is operating but you're not sure and you don't have the fundamentals in place can be risky and challenging. One of the last points I want to raise, and then we'll quickly move over to some of the questions, the excellent questions you guys are raising. Do I bring home performance in-house or do I do it with subs? I can't answer that for your particular business. There are pros and cons to each. In-house certainly adds complexity. It takes a lot longer to ramp up to be able to deliver it. It has the advantage, though, of completely controlling the customer experience. You're not relying on subs that may not have that same expectation about what making customers happy. They don't have the same expectation that you do. You're going to miss some of the revenue opportunity. You're going to miss some of the margin opportunity. You're going to miss the opportunity, perhaps, by the way, to be seen as the expert to the homeowner. If you're subbing, somebody else may be seen as the expert, depending on whether you're subbing the diagnostics, the insulation, installation, what have you. On the other hand, if you sub it out, it's simpler, it's faster to market. Somebody else is impacting the customer, though. You have to be prepared for that. Don't think, by the way, that subbing out means you don't have to do any training. You probably have to train your subs to deliver at the level of quality and deliver the customer experience that you should be insisting on. In my opinion, if we're choosing between the two, in-house in the long term is the way to go, not just in-house, but fully integrated throughout your business. Go back to that seasonality perspective. Let me give you a little bit of a picture of the opportunity here. It's August. You don't have enough technicians to run all the very high quality emergency replacement leads that you're getting right now. You can't go out and hire quality technicians because every other contractor in your area is in exactly the same boat. They're all really busy. All technicians are really busy. It's the wrong time to be looking for employees. What if, though, you had some insulation installation crews who were cross-trained? Now, I'm not saying you have to turn them into full-fledged HVAC service technicians or install technicians, but there is no reason that a well-trained insulation tech who also is completely bought into your company and who understands about showing up on time and understands about how to interact with the customer and make them happy and all that stuff, there's no reason that insulation technician can't go out and help your service techs and install technicians during this busy peak season do demolition, do some of the prep around the house, pull the box, help set the box, all that sort of stuff that just makes your other technicians more productive and actually allows you to take advantage of that huge revenue opportunity that you see for that small window. Few people have insulation emergencies. A lot of people have air conditioning emergencies in August. So you can defer some of that insulation work, pull some of those crews over. That's why if you went back to that seasonality graph, you can level off your revenue throughout the year and still have an opportunity to hit that, to peak even higher during the busiest times because you've got the paid staff, you've got the overhead covered, and you're able to deliver. I think in the long run, bringing it in-house and fully integrating it into everything you do, making sure you look at every house as a full opportunity, not just as a furnace or air conditioner replacement opportunity, is the way that you as an HVAC contractor can win big. So just in summary, and then over to your questions, home performance makes sense for an HVAC contractor because higher revenue, higher margins, good closing rates, lower lead costs, all of that stuff comes together to generate higher profitability for you. You have an opportunity to grow your market share, capture the flag before your competition even begins to figure this stuff out. Higher customer satisfaction not only saves you money by reducing callbacks, but it saves you money by reducing your long-term marketing and lead generation costs, because most of your business will come from making existing customers happy and continuing to view them as a source for new business, either within their own homes or via referrals. And then, and only then, once you've figured out how this makes sense in terms of your business, you also take a look at some of the existing and emerging program opportunities, rebates, incentives, financing, what have you. So thank you, and let's open it up to some questions now.
Okay, fantastic. We do have a lot of them here. Here's one. Do you recommend setting up a home performance division or weaving home performance into your everyday HVAC work? I could see it being very difficult to weave into your current business model completely.
Excellent question. I think in the long term, the way to be is completely, fully integrated, woven in throughout the business. But you're right, it is complicated. And I think the much more reasonable approach is to look at it, set up a different division initially, gain the experience. You know, there's a lot of stuff you don't know about the home performance business that you're going to want to figure out, and you want to figure it out sort of in isolation without kind of the compounded confusion and complexity of trying to integrate it. So I think setting it up as a separate division makes a lot of sense out of the gate. In the long run, though, the bigger opportunity is going to be when you can approach every house, regardless of the reason for the call, whether they called you for a furnace or they called you for insulation. If you can approach every house and take a look at the entire house and take a look at the customer's problems, you're going to be better off. And I think that's the end game that you ought to be thinking about, even as you step there by creating a division.
We have another one here. Performing testing and diagnostics is time-consuming and must be done by skilled professionals. How can we convince homeowners that the testing and diagnostic work is worth more than what most of us charge for these services?
Great question. And here's where an HVAC contractor has a huge opportunity and frankly, a huge advantage. If you're in the business, and I know many people on this call are, if you're in the business of just providing the audit and the consultation, you have to figure out how to generate the lead for that audit, which can be expensive to do, and an HVAC contractor can generate that lead more cheaply. I talked briefly about the service tax as an opportunity there. And then you also have to charge enough for that audit to make a viable living, to sustain your business and hopefully have enough profit from the business to pay your mortgage and put food on the table. An HVAC contractor actually doesn't have to do that. First of all, the acquisition costs are cheaper, and some of the shared costs of getting out to the house make the actual assessment process less expensive. If I have to go to the house to look, because I'm assuming all HVAC contractors want to make sure they're putting in the right piece of equipment, and they want to do some baseline level of diagnostics to make sure that basic safety and sizing issues are addressed, for example. Adding additional incremental steps on to get a more full-blown diagnostics, yes, it does take additional time, but you're already partway there. And lastly, some of these costs can be folded into, you can decide to charge the homeowner, but you don't have to sustain your business on what you charge for the assessment. You can fold some of the costs of that into your general overhead, which is spread across revenue, not just from the assessment, but from revenue, and fairly so because it is part of your general overhead from doing installations. And the more revenue you have, the bigger your average tickets are, the broader you get to spread those overhead costs, and that's why your margins are increased. So back to the question, it's really hard to do that, and that's why HVAC contractors have a huge advantage. It's really hard in a market where there is very poor awareness about what home performance is, or what a blower door is, or why you should have to pay $500 for an energy audit, which probably is worth $500. It may be worth $1,000. But it's hard to get people to think about that because they don't value it. So an HVAC contractor has the advantage of being able to talk about it in terms of what they do value, fixing problems they're experiencing in their home.
Okay. We got a few questions about training, recommendations for training, what kind of training is required, that kind of thing.
Obviously, I come at this from the perspective that you have to know technically what you're talking about to be able to do this. There's a variety of training available out there. I would go to Home Energy Magazine and take a look at their annual issue on training resources to get the laundry list. If you have programs in your area, quite often they subsidize the training. In terms of what, I'm particularly fond of the training that leads to BPI certification. That said, I don't think BPI certification is the end point. For me, BPI certification is the starting point. Okay, you've shown enough technical mastery here that we can begin talking about all the stuff you don't know from a technical perspective, and at the same time, you're going to need marketing assistance. You're going to need sales support. Whether you have that sort of, you may even need operational support. And whether you have that capacity in-house or you have to hire it out, don't ignore that portion of your business. Too often in this industry, we get hung up on the technical as the be-all, end-all. It is absolutely there. It is a fundamental prerequisite, but the technical training alone is not sufficient to be able to go out there and deliver this successfully in the marketplace.
Okay, we had go ahead.
I'll add on to that. We have too many people on this call from too broad an area. If you want to reach out to me individually, you see my email up on the screen. Let me know what state you're in. I can probably point you to a few local resources to help you focus. Shop around, see what sort of subsidies might be available, see what sort of offerings they have. But make sure when you're looking at training, look at the training leading to any, I don't care whether you're talking BPI, ResNet, NATE, whatever, leading to the technical certification as the beginning, not as the end.
Okay. We did receive one request. Do you have any recommendations on CRM systems?
Boy, there are several great CRM systems in the HVAC industry, and if you have a CRM system that works well for your HVAC service business, it's probably more than up to the task. Usually with just some slight modification or a couple additional fields that you're looking for to be able to handle home performance. The HVAC service business is actually much more complicated from a CRM perspective than the install side. And home performance installation projects, they may be a little bit more complicated, but they look a lot like HVAC projects. So Successware would be an example. Total Office Manager, TOM, would be another example from the HVAC world. There's one I particularly like, and I know there's several smaller HVAC companies and home performance companies successfully using one called Solve 360. For smaller businesses, and I've had the opportunity to kind of talk with a few dozen both HVAC and home performance businesses over the last few months to figure out what's working for them. I like Solve 360 because it's super easy to use. It's cloud-based. It works from a variety of mobile apps. It's not sort of platform dependent. You can use it with an iPhone, you can use it with a Droid, and you can use it with Windows. And if you know how to use Facebook, you can probably figure out how to use Solve 360. And if you don't know how to use Facebook, your kids probably do, so they can probably help. You don't need to be super tech savvy. If you're a smaller business in particular and you don't have CRM in place and you don't want the big upfront software investment, take a hard look at Solve 360.
Okay, we had another question. Who's the best person in an HVAC company to perform the audits and sell the fixes? Should it be salespeople, service techs, separate auditors? Should separate auditors sell? If HVAC salespeople are trained to do this, they could sell equipment and HP upgrades, thus upping their average ticket. What's your take?
The answer is all of the above. My favorite is the diagnostician. What I'll call the auditor is also the salesperson. When I blend those two roles, I tend to use the word advisor. Auditing and sales are two functions, and they can combine in the single body of the advisor. One of the reasons that's my favorite is because you have the person doing the audit, doing the diagnostics, that is, has a great opportunity to engage the customer in a conversation to help A, figure out what's really going on, what they're concerned about, and B, educate the homeowner. And that creates this wonderful trust situation that makes it much simpler to actually move all the way down the process to a signed contract, which is the only way that real work gets done. That said, it's often very difficult to combine the technical capacity and the sales skills in a single individual. It's certainly more difficult than having one person do an audit and one person do a sales. And for an HVAC company, that is a viable pathway. Having someone do the diagnostic audit, you're still going to want to train them on some basic, customer conversation, customer education skills. And then you also have to sort of facilitate that handoff to the person who's going to do the sales, rather than just kind of mail your report in and have a salesperson come who's not very familiar with all of the aspects of both the home performance process from a technical perspective and the findings in that individual home in particular. So they can both work. My favorite approach is the all-in-one, single person wearing several different hats. but it's a reasonable approach, and not just in a transition in the long term, but also as a training approach. And a lot depends on who your in-house staff are right now to sort of do a two-person team, whether it's at the same time or whether there's some sort of facilitated handoff between the person doing the audit and the person making the sale.
We had another question here. We figure our labor cost, not the retail, at $65 an hour, which includes all the P&L expenses. What generally would you consider your definition of the cost of labor?
The cost of labor. See if I understand. I mean, when the direct cost of labor, and I'm not talking about sort of the billable cost here, is obviously it's not just the wages or salary you're applying or paying. It's all of the fringe and indirect costs associated with that particular individual. You know, you've got taxes. Hopefully you have vacation time and paid holidays and medical and retirement plan and all that additional stuff. Now we can talk about burdening that labor further so you have a good billable rate. We need to get into the individual books to really have this conversation. I will say this to an HVAC audience, though. When you look at direct materials and direct labor on the HVAC side and sort of what those percentages of your gross are, you can almost flip that when you start looking about the shell improvement side. On the HVAC equipment side, materials cost is usually quite a bit higher than labor. On the insulation air sealing side, it's the other way around. Labor cost is usually quite a bit higher than the materials cost. And you know, if you're not partnering with somebody who already understands and knows what all those costs are, then that's one of the things that you're going to have to figure out over time, so you can set the appropriate benchmarks and, you know, measure yourself appropriately and know whether you're winning or losing.
Okay. I work in a home performance program in some sections of the state. HVAC contractors understand the importance of addressing whole house. Any tips or suggestions on how to approach HVAC contractors that are stuck in the old way of doing things and getting them to change their thinking?
The leading HVAC contractors are figuring out this very quickly, and you know, I think over the next several years we'll see that top 5% of the market move very aggressively in this direction. As I mentioned, the leaders already are. The lower 90% of HVAC contractors, it's going to be a much more difficult conversation. And you know, no one in the contracting industry, not no one, but generally the contracting industry is not known for being innovators and early adopters. And part of it is because, you know, they're trying to stay afloat. They have to make payroll on Friday. So if you're trying to rope an HVAC contractor into that, you're going to have to sort of be able to explain with real numbers in their particular business how it's going to help make them more profitable, more likely to be able to make payroll on Friday, pay their vendors, and have a few nickels left over that they can call profit, or at least pay themselves at the end of the day. So it's hard to answer that question in a general sense, because you have to be specific, and I don't know whoever asked the question, the particular approach they're using. But if you are selling your diagnostics or installation services to the contractor, how is that helping them reduce callbacks, increase revenue, increase margins? And that's the conversation you're going to have. Some of them you're going to be able to convince on quality alone, but those people tend to be in the top 5% that are going to be moving there. They're not the ones in the bottom 90%. And yes, I do know math. I kind of left the that 5% in the middle between the 90 and the 95 that you may be able to convince, and that's probably where you want to focus.
Okay, we had another question about homeowners do not like to hear the word free. How do we convince them that weatherization is not free?
Don't ever use that word. I'm not sure why they would think that. If you're a contractor in a home, presumably you're not offering to do their maintenance for free. You're not offering to replace their furnace or air conditioner for free. So I'm not sure why you would offer them insulation and air sealing for free. If they're income qualifying and they think that they may qualify for the weatherization assistance program, they may not be your best potential customer. Even there, though, I wouldn't prejudge. In some parts of the country, people who qualify for the weatherization assistance program are on waiting lists 2 years long, and sometimes, although their incomes don't necessarily show it, they do have other means and that they can figure out a way to pay. Take sort of free out of your vocabulary to the greatest extent you can, and focus during the education process on understanding for yourself what their real problems and concerns are. Obviously, marry that to the technical issues you're finding in the house, and first of all, you shouldn't be focusing on the cost anyway. You should be focusing on the value. And the only way to focus on the value is not ignore the benefit side of the equation. Make sure they understand that you're making the daughter's bedroom more comfortable, or they're eliminating the stinky crawl space issue. You're going to reduce an ice damming or icicle problem. Focus on the benefits that they really care about, and quite often people are going to assign a cost to that for you. Certainly you don't want to start the conversation talking about cost. You want to start the conversation talking about solving problems.
Okay. We'll go for about another 5 minutes or so, Mike, if that's okay.
That is okay.
All right. What phrase, energy audit or energy assessment or other phrase, is getting the most attention in the industry or with the public?
Boy, we need to convene at ACI and have a brawl about this or something. Audit has, a lot of people will tell you, has a lot of negative connotation and baggage. It's, audit is what the IRS does. That said, try to get a TV reporter or a newspaper reporter, or any journalist to talk about an assessment. You can use the word assessment, explain what you're saying. Oh, you mean an energy audit. So the word audit's out there. At the end of the day, I don't think it matters as much about what word you choose to use. Pick one, stick with it, and then be able to explain the deeper meaning about what you're doing. And it's very, very rare that I would encourage you to try to sell an audit or an assessment. I'd much rather have you try to market and educate and sell around the concept of the benefits you're providing. If all you have at the end of the day is an audit or assessment or whatever you want to call it to sell, you're in a bind perhaps, but focus on selling what that benefit is and explain how this tool helps get them there. I'm doing this because that's going to help me figure out what's going on in your house, and that's how we're going to make your daughter's bedroom more comfortable.
Okay. We have another question. Would you recommend multiple levels of audit packages? For example, a quick audit to see if they benefit from more testing, and they use that dirty four-letter word, free. A full audit for, say, $400, a full audit plus IR camera, duct testing, IAQ, et cetera, et cetera.
I generally don't. I know a few people who have some success there, and the reason is that there's a few reasons. First of all, why do I want to do an audit? If I'm a contractor, why do I want to do an audit that's not going to tell me everything I need to know and help me educate the homeowner about everything they need to know? What did it cost me to get myself out to that house, and what's the small incremental cost to go from a walk-through audit to a full-blown audit versus what's the real value to me from being able to go through the entire process. The cost is high to go back multiple times, and the benefit of doing the full audit is too good to pass up at any opportunity I can. The other reason I don't particularly like that approach is something from behavioral economics, and I'll geek out a little bit for you here, but this is a fascinating arena, and it's something that everybody should pay attention to. Too often in this energy efficiency world, we fall back on this consumer as a rational actor theory, which is it's just not true. That is not how people make decisions based on, at least not most people most of the time, based on pure economic rationality. And yet we focus on energy savings and payback, or ROI, or things like that. You need to focus on some of the real drivers between how people make decisions and what motivates them to buy and get things done. Whether we're talking about granite countertops, couches, or energy improvements. So back to this free survey walkthrough, diagnostics without IR, with IR. There's something called the single action bias that us humans tend to exhibit. We like to solve problems, but we like to do it by taking one action, the single action. Once we've done that action, we consider the job done. And we've certainly seen this in areas where programs or others have gone out and done free audits or free assessments or free ratings, and we follow behind and explain what we're going to do. And, oh, no, I don't need anything. I already had that done. So people think because they had their, I don't care what you call it, survey, audit, assessment, once someone takes that first step, they are less likely to take the next step. And the more steps you introduce in the process, the more choice you introduce into the conversation, the less likely you actually are to get people to the finish line. So, there are some nuances and exceptions to that, but as a general rule, I think you're fighting an uphill battle if you're trying to take people through additional steps or sort of upsell the fullness of the diagnostics. Move to what you need to figure out what's going on in the house and educate the homeowner about what's going on as quickly as possible.
Okay. I think one more question.
One more?
Yeah, one more and we'll wrap it up here. A lot of good questions. So I will forward to Mike the list of questions just to continue to stimulate his thinking on this topic. One kind of theme that's been coming up lately here is kind of the best of the best. What have you seen, and can you name specific PUCs, Public Utility Commissions, areas of the country, utilities, states, programs that you think are doing some of the best work?
Whew, time to name names, huh? Boy, this is going to be challenging because I'm sure on the spur of the moment I'm going to forget a couple, but I'll tell you some of the basic approaches that I like. There's no perfect program, I'll say that right off the bat, and there's no completely evil program either that I'm aware of. So some of the good elements. I like, for example, in California, the Energy Upgrade California approach, which, and believe me, there's a host of challenges associated with this, but the direction is a step away from cost-based type incentives and rebates to energy savings-based incentives and rebates. It's fraught with peril, and there's all sorts of challenges, but that approach makes more sense to me because at the end of the day, the program then only has to worry about paying for what they want to see, which is energy savings. Or in this case, full admission, it's a good step or 2 steps removed from that modeled energy savings. There's a whole other discussion for you. But it takes the cost out of the equation. Quick example, and I'll pick on one of the industry whipping boys here, which is new windows. If new windows save a little bit of energy, we could incentivize those windows based on the energy we save. If there's some ratepayer or public good that comes from that. The benefit's going to be really, really small because we know that in most cases windows don't save much energy. But if you're paying based on the benefit alone, great. Now the homeowner can they're going to get a few dollars incentive on that window, and they can choose a $200 window or they can choose a $1,200 window. And the impact on the ratepayers is the same because they're not paying a percentage of the cost of the window. They're paying for the benefit that's received. I particularly like that approach. It takes a lot of the forced things like prescribed list of measures and SIR requirements based on homeowner investment, and you count all of the homeowner investments against energy savings, even though the homeowner really wants to pay for comfort or aesthetics or any one of dozens of other reasons. Takes that out of the equation. I think that's the right approach. I've been in a few programs recently. I'll use South Carolina as an example. What I like South Carolina is they're paying attention to providing business support. In fact, I'm going to be in Michigan doing this next week, business training support for their participating contractors, not limiting it to technical training. Again, the technical training, don't get me wrong, it's critically important. It's a prerequisite to have the conversation. But too often programs focus on technical training. They'll subsidize the technical training. They'll subsidize the BPI certification, get a lot of people trained and certified, and then they leave them hanging and don't know the next step. And then another program best practice that I like to see is visibility between the contractor and the program. So if I'm submitting paperwork to you, I know where it stands. If you have to approve it, great. Set some approval times, just like you expect programs expect contractors to adhere to certain timelines. The program should set up their timelines and hold themselves accountable. If I've got a customer that I've got all excited about making a home improvement, and it includes an air conditioner replacement, I have to wait a month to hear back from the program, I'm not very interested in that program because the homeowner is going to lose interest, I'm going to lose the sale, and I've completely wasted all that money I invested in making the homeowner excited about moving forward. I will forward to the full group because I think it's a good way to sort of stimulate some thought and engage with your particular programs. A piece I put together that was geared towards educating programs about what to do and what not to do to make it easy for contractors. I think that was the last question. Again, thank you, Bill, for organizing this, and thanks to all the attendees for sitting through this and for some great questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to them all.
Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate it.